Now that I've created the slope and aspect data, I'll reclassify them into meaningful categories. In this case, I'll be reclassifying them into categories important to identifying habitat suitability for a particular plant species. Once the slope and aspect data have been reclassified, I'll combine them in task 3 to identify suitable habitat areas. So I'm going to turn off the aspect so we can see slope below. And the slope data set has values of 0 to 76.8. I'm going to classify this into 3 categories. Those pixels with values from 0 to 45, those with 45 to 55, and those greater than 55. To do this, I'll be using a GRASS tool that requires a text file that you create describing the classification of the data values. Since I'm starting with slope, I'm going to just show you the text file that you create for slope and explain how this works. So the first line says 0:45:1. What this will do is take pixels with a value of 0 to 45 and give them a value 1 in the output raster. It'll then take pixels with a value of greater than 45 to 55 and assign them a value of 2. And then everything greater than 55. So we enter 55.00001 and an asterisk for the upper limit. This means the greatest value in the raster data set. It's a wildcard. And those pixels with a value greater than 55 will receive a value of 3. So the output raster from this will have 3 values, 1, 2, and 3. And the value of 3 is the prime habitat for this plant. It prefers steep slopes. So I'll minimize this. And I'm going to turn on the processing toolbox. So I'm going to go to the processing menu and check toolbox. And toolbox turns on over here. I'm going to expand the GRASS commands, expand raster, and I'm looking for one called r.recode. If I scroll down a little ways, they're in alphabetical order, and here's r.recode. Recodes categorical raster data. So I'm going to double click on this to open the tool. Okay, here's the tool window. The input layer is going to be slope. The file containing the recode rules is the one I just had open. So I'll select that text file. The only other thing I need to fill out is the output raster file. So I'll click the ellipsis button and choose Save to File. I'm going to go into the Lab 7 My Data folder. And I'll call this Slope Recode. So slope is the input. I've created a text file with the recode rules, and I'm naming the output file. I'll click Run to run this. It switches to the log tab, and I'll see some feedback from the tool as it runs. And the new layer appears in the table of contents as Output Raster Layer. It appears to only have 2 categories, 1 black and 2 white. So I'm going to double click on this layer to go into the layer properties and go to the Style tab. I'm going to change the render type to single band pseudo color. I'm going to change the color ramp to red, yellow, green. I'm going to change the mode to equal interval and give it 3 classes matching the categories in my data. Then I'm going to go down and change the load min-max values settings. I'm going to switch this to min-max and the accuracy to actual and click load. Then I'll click classify. And you'll see I now have values of 1, 2, and 3. Since the steeper slopes were coded with 3s, this color ramp will work because green is color for prime habitat, red will be the color for non-habitat according to the slope. I'll go back to the General tab and I'll change the name from Output Raster Layer to Slope Reclassified. And I'll click OK. So now we have this data reclassified, with the green areas being the steepest slopes that would be prime habitat for this plant according to the slope alone, and red being the poor slopes for this plant. Now I'll recode the aspect data in the same fashion. This plant prefers west-facing slopes. Hence the west-facing slopes will be set to 3, the north and south are next best, so I'll set them to 2, and the eastern slopes will be set to 1. I'm going to bring up the document for the aspect recode rules. Remember that the values of the aspect raster are compass bearings, or azimuths, and they range from 0 to 360. 270 is due west, 0 is north, 180 is south, and 90 is east. So I've classified these according to the parameters of the plant. So again, I've got the pixel values here and the output value here. So the range of values that are receiving a 3 are going to be the west-facing slopes. The other directions that aren't due west but incorporate west, like northwest, southwest, will receive a 2. And the slopes that are facing east will receive a 1. So that's my rules, and you'll set up a text file just like this. I'll open the recode tool again. This time the input layer is going to be aspect. I'll locate my aspect recode rules text file, and I'm going to save the output as aspect recode. So once I've provided the input layer, the text file, and the output, I can click Run. And here is my output raster layer from that recode operation. This could again be classified in a similar way. In fact, I can right-click on this layer, copy its style, right-click on the output raster layer, the aspect reclassified, and paste the style to this layer to see how that fares. And you'll see the west-facing slopes are receiving the prime habitat values, and the east-facing slopes are not the prime habitat. They're suboptimal. In the final task, I'll use the raster calculator to combine the reclassified slope and aspect data to produce a potential habitat output.